Arsenal return from the international break to face a club in absolute turmoil. What will Nottingham Forest bring to the Emirates on Saturday, and should Arsenal be worried about a potential new manager bounce? This is Arsenal Unfiltered. Let's get started. Yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. I hope you are feeling well wherever you are in the world. We are 2 days out at the time of recording, but 1 day for when you guys are hearing this, out from our next game, Arsenal versus Nottingham Forest at the Emirates, which is really exciting. A game that we dominated last year and the start of a maybe month-long period where everything looked really, really good for Arsenal before Bukayo Saka went down injured in December. So we have previous of coming back off an international break and playing very, very well against Nottingham Forest. So I'm going to talk about that game today, preview the game, because there's been a lot of changes at Forest that we need to talk about. And Mikel Arteta has some selection headaches as well. Just want to welcome you if you are listening from in and around the world. We have new listeners from United Arab Emirates this month, Barbados as well. Never seen that many listeners from Barbados, so shout out if you're from Barbados. Switzerland, Norway, Costa Rica, I think that's a brand new country, and of course our ever loyal listeners in the United Kingdom and United States. Welcome everyone, and I hope you are looking forward to this weekend's game. If you want to stay in touch with what happens in this weekend's game, obviously watch the game, but make sure that you follow Arsenal Unfiltered, because I will probably do an instant reaction if I can, but if not, there will definitely be a full match review out on either Sunday or Monday. So make sure you go wherever you get your podcast from, hit follow, and then you will get that podcast straight to your device free of charge. So make sure you do that. Let's get into it, and I'm going to start with Nottingham Forest before coming on to Arsenal after the break. I'm going to read directly from the BBC Sports site, because I think it's important that we get this right, because their situation is just all over the place. So middle of the international break, we got the story. Nottingham Forest head coach Nuno Espirito Santo has been sacked just 3 games into the season, 9 days after a 3-0 defeat at home to West Ham. At this point, when I'm reading this post from, they were talking about Ange Postecoglou as a contender. He is now obviously in the job. He is no longer a contender. That is confirmed. Ange Postecoglou back in the Premier League. A good news story for all of the other 19 clubs, I would say, but I'll go into that in more detail. Forest did issue a statement thanking Nuno Espirito Santo for the work he did. Obviously, helped them avoid relegation in his first period in charge, and then last season got them into Europe. They are set to play in the Europa League. Just on a note for Nuno, I do think it is so unfair and cruel that he won't be able to lead his team in Europe, having worked so hard to get them there and played such good football last year. I do think that's cruel. It is partly of his own doing. I think it looks like when you read around the reports, the Edu appointment at Nottingham Forest, or their football group, I should say, drove a bit of a stake between him and Marek Anaris. And I think maybe, he probably could have swallowed his pride a little bit more, but Edu and Marek Anaris, I'm not saying that right. I am not saying Marinakis. Marinakis. I'm going to go with Marinakis. That relationship that those two had meant that Nuno felt even more out of the picture than he did before. So very, very tough. Like I say, Postecoglou is now appointed. What that means for how Nottingham Forest will play long term, I think we all know. I think we all know that Ange Postecoglou will be trying to embed his principles, embed what he tried to do at Tottenham with the Forest players, who I guess you could argue are not as good as the players at Tottenham. So it probably will be an even bigger risk, which, that could be really, really, really difficult for Forest, and may unstick them this year. They had a coach who was really, really good at coaching defensively stable teams, and they are going to go completely the opposite. And sometimes you might get that effect where they still work on instinct of what Nuno had them doing, and the defensive structures are still there, but you pepper in the attacking flair that an Ange Postecoglou side has, that's great. That period where you get a real distinct change in style and you get the best of both worlds is really good for a team. Unfortunately, it does not last long unless the incoming coach is willing to keep some of those coaches around, or renege on his principles. We know Ange Postecoglou is not going to do that. So yeah, I think it's an odd scenario at Forest. They, off the pitch, have a real lack of stability. On the pitch, it's been a very mixed start. They beat Brentford 3-1 on the first day. I think it was Wood and Doy as the goal scorers there. But Brentford, they're another team that they've been under a whirlwind of pressure this summer. They have really been picked apart. So I wasn't expecting Brentford to do much this year. So I'm not sure how much you can read into that. A 1-1 draw away at Crystal Palace is not a bad result for a team like Forest. So I think that seems okay. But then they fell apart against West Ham, at home to West Ham, of course. It's 3 goals for West Ham in the last 7 minutes. West Ham, who have been utterly terrible. I mean, they had conceded 3 to Sunderland, 5 to Chelsea, and 3 to Wolves in the Cup. Forest, to concede 3 to West Ham, not put a goal on them when they're playing at home, a really, really tough start. They have massively packed out their squad this year, by the way. Forest really added a lot of depth. They've still got the core of their team there. Matt Sells has remained. Milenkovic has remained. They've, of course, brought Zinchenko in from us, which is interesting. Gibbs-White remained after all that controversy and all that time. They've got Omari Hutchinson as well. They brought him from Ipswich for £37.5 million. Incredible money for Omari Hutchinson. His transfer fees are now making Arsenal look very silly. Elliot Anderson, who's recently starred for England. They've brought in Douglas Luiz. And of course, up top, they've got that group of Chris Wood, Hudson-Odoi, Awoniyi. They did obviously lose Elanga to Newcastle, but I think for the most part, they've kept a lot of players, which, I think is good for them. I think they basically have the same team, but with a lot more depth behind them. They've got players like Igor Jesus, James McAtee, Douglas Luiz, who I've already mentioned, Zinchenko, who I've already mentioned. They've got players like that who have come in and added depth, so they should be in a good place long term in this league, or should have, I should say, before Ange Postecoglou came in. I just think that they don't have the squad to play in the way that he wants to play. You look at their defence. Murillo is a decent mover, but Milenkovic is a bit clunky, I would say. Zinchenko, we know he can get caught out. Ola Aina is a really physical presence, but potentially not the most defensively astute, I would say. They don't have anyone that I look in that back line and say, wow, you are a really, really good athlete, I would say. And look, say that in context. These are Premier League footballers. They're, of course, all absurdly good athletes, but remember when Tottenham would get caught out and they had Mickey van der Ven. Mickey van der Ven is one of the fastest defenders in the Premier League, and they were still getting caught out with Ange's high line. I would worry for Forest if they are going to play a similarly high line, that they just do not have the defenders to cover that and get back. Obviously, they had a really good defensive record last year, but I think it's a bit reductionist to just say, well, we have a good defensive record, let's add a really attacking coach and that will solve all of our problems. We'll be able to do it at both ends of the pitch. I think that's, borderline stupid, really. But Marinakis has not really proved himself, I think, in my opinion, to be a super astute kind of mover in the football world, and he will really need to rely on Edu and Edu's recruitment to upgrade this squad, I would say, as they go into this Ange Postecoglou era. If there really was rifts between himself and Nuno, I don't know why they didn't do this earlier in the summer. I don't know if it because Edu's been known about for a long time, right, in terms of him coming in, and I'm sure he would have had influence over Marinakis, even if he couldn't officially say he was working for Forest. And I'm sure there would have been influence there. So it's really interesting how this is playing out. I don't understand why you wouldn't kind of get in early and say, are we committing to Nuno or are we going a different direction? I know that things have happened. I know that Nuno's come out and criticised him, but surely there would have been signs that relationship would have been falling away behind the scenes, and for it to take the media statement of Nuno to come out and make all of this happen, I think someone wasn't kind of horizon scanning and looking forward and thinking strategically about the direction they want to take this club. Nevertheless, new manager bounce is a thing, and Arsenal will need to look out for that. I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, I'm going to talk a lot more about our beloved Arsenal. Don't go anywhere. Sorry for interrupting everyone, but I am on a mission and I need your help. I'm trying to get Arsenal Unfiltered into the ears of as many people as possible, and the best way that you can help me do that is by going and leaving a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts at. That really, really helps me grow the podcast and allows more people to hear the Arsenal Unfiltered coverage 3 times a week. So if you would be so kind to go and leave a review wherever you get your podcast from, I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hello and welcome back to this episode of Arsenal Unfiltered. In the first half, we spoke a little bit about our opponents on Saturday, Nottingham Forest, and all the goings on there, everything that's happened over the summer with their manager changes, their transfers, and how I'm not quite sure how this is going to work for them long term. But like I said, new manager bounce is a thing, and it's a thing we need to be ready for without a number of our key players. Now, no more players got injured in the international break. I have to say that. That's really, really important. We are healthy as we were before the international break, but unfortunately it looks like White will still be out, Saka will still be out, of course, Norgard we're really unsure about, Jesus obviously out, Kai almost certainly out, and Saliba, that's a bit of an unknown, but I do think with the reports that came out of France, we might be without Saliba, which is a real shame, because I was kind of hoping his ankle thing would resolve quite quickly, but the reports coming out of France over the international break suggest he'll be back sort of the next international break, or after the next international break, I should say. Recording this prior to Arteta's press conference, so you might actually know more about the injuries than I do at this point, and if there's anyone else to add to that list, but as of right now, as of time of recording, they are our injured players that we are not expecting to have. So who does that mean we will end up playing? Well, I think there are some really interesting spots. Interesting, not because of maybe selection headaches, because I think we will be forced into a number of selections, but interesting to see how players do. So with White out, there's no real option to drop him into right centre-back to replace Saliba or shuffle Timber along, which I think means Christian Mosquera will start, which is really exciting. He obviously came on at Anfield and did super well, super well. It will be a different challenge. Ekitike is a very crafty player at Liverpool, and I think he did really, really well. He did well kind of marshalling Gakpo coming in off that side. Chris Wood is a wily old operator who is a big guy. He will not even be interested in Gabriel on Saturday. He will try and run Christian Mosquera as much as he can and try and figure out his weaker side and run down that side. So it'll be interesting to see how Mosquera holds up to that, but realistically, I can't see Arteta shuffling a left footer along in any way, shape or form. It's just not something he does. So I think it will be Mosquera and Gabriel at the back. It might have been a good opportunity to rest Gabriel. If we had Saliba, maybe go Calafiori at left centre back, Miles Lewis-Skelly at left back to kind of rotate and rest Gabriel after a big
flight back from Brazil. But I'm not sure he's going to do that without Saliba either. So I think Calafiori will maintain his spot at left back. Him and Miles Lewis-Skelly both got rests in the second half of the international break, in the second games, I should say. So it is a straight shootout, and I think with Calafiori's form, he will dominate that space. Of course, David Raya in goal. That's to be said. It's an obvious one, really. And then in midfield, I think Declan Rice, Martin Zubimendi, Martin Ødegaard will be obvious and kept in, and it will of course be Victor Gyökeres and Noni Madueke through the middle and off the right. The big shout is at left wing. Will Eze start at left wing? He's obviously been away with England, but I'm sure he's been in contact with Arsenal and been talking to Rice, Madueke, Miles Lewis-Skelly about the principles and learning a little bit more about that role from Arteta, from the other players, and just seeing what he's going to have to do at left wing. And with the way Martinelli played against Liverpool, I think it is an almost sure thing that Eze starts. Almost sure thing, because when you think about Nottingham Forest, we should dominate the possession, we should dominate the ball, and Martinelli's defensive work and his knowledge about the system off the ball is probably less needed when you're thinking about dealing with a counter-attacking team. To be fair, we don't know if Ange is going to stick with the counter-attacking system or launch straight into his kind of basketball games kind of tactic and philosophy, and it will be interesting to see how he gets his players to play and how, if he can instill his principles in them very, very early. That will be very interesting to see. But either way, I don't think you need Martinelli's defensive capabilities against the standard of player Nottingham Forest have. You need it against Liverpool, and I completely understand why he started Martinelli in the Liverpool game. I don't understand why he gave him, more time after half time. I think the first half showed Martinelli wasn't at it, and we probably should have subbed him at least for Trossard, if not for Eze. And Eze was really good when he came on, so I think he will start at left wing, but it will be interesting to see if Arteta follows that train of thought. So let's run through that quickly. David Raya, I think, in goal. Timber, Mosquera, Gabriel, Calafiori, Rice, Subamendi, Erdegaard, Madueke on the right, where he's looked so good, Gyökeres and Eze. In terms of our recent record against Forest, we didn't concede a goal to them last year. We drew one game 0-0. That was the away game. And like I mentioned at the start of the podcast, 3-0 in the November game just after that international break. We've got a generally good record against Forest. Only lost one game since kind of 2022, I think that is. Yeah, in October 2022. We've only lost one game in that period from October 2022 to now. Generally, I think this is a team that we should be beating, and I must admit, I think Forest overperforming last year, which they did. They overperformed their XG. Chris Wood massively overperformed his XG. I think them overperforming last year made our start kind of inflatedly hard. Like, obviously it is still hard. Old Trafford, really difficult place to go. Anfield, impossible. Anfield? Yeah, we went to Anfield. Anfield, really, really difficult place to go. We've got Manchester City, we've got Newcastle, but I think everyone was looking at Forest and going, and another team in Europe. But really, when you look at their squad, when you look at the turmoil that they've been in, I don't think this is as hard a game as it was last year. I think we should really be dominating this game and be able to, perform similarly to how we played against Leeds. We're at home. I would expect Victor Gyökeres to get plenty of chances. They've had a long time now. I want to see him. I'm not saying scoring all of them, but I want to see him start getting to 2, 3, 4 shots a game. I don't think he's been there yet so far this season, so I want to see his shot numbers go up, even if his goals aren't yet going in. I think that's a really important thing that we need to do. Calafiori getting around the outside of Eze will be really interesting to see how that starts to gel in our system. I'm not sure how that will affect the way Nottingham Forest play, but I think it will be really, really interesting to watch that develop from our point of view and continue with the double pivot work that we've been doing with Rice and Subamendi. I think that's been great and it allowed our fullbacks to be more of the attacking threat than the left 8, which I think is probably the right change for this squad, the way we've made it up. Of course, there is a chance we've got Piero Hincapié to begin his Arsenal career, so we might see a debut for him. He might come on. I think if he came on above Miles Lewis-Skelly, that would be a real kick in the teeth for Miles Lewis-Skelly. So we need to watch that one with a really close eye and see, will Hincapié maybe come on for Gabriel, or will Calafiori maybe lose his spot and come on at centre-back for Gabriel? It's really interesting to see how that's going to develop, because you could say that we've got 3 players in that left-back group, or that left-sided group. You could say we've got 4 players who all feel that they absolutely will deserve to start. Hincapié is a very seasoned international who will want to be playing a lot of football. Obviously, Gabriel, Miles Lewis-Skelly, they've owned shirts last season. Calafiori started this season really, really well. It's going to be interesting. Okay, let's get on to a prediction before I wrap up. You know what? I'm going to go big. I'm going to go 4-0. I just feel like these are the kind of games that we've built our squad for this year. I think Gyökeres will score. I hope Madueke will score as well. And I actually think we might get a couple from corners and free kicks. So I'm going to go Gabriel for 1, Gyökeres for 1, Madueke for 1, and you know what? Let's throw Calafiori in for a goal as well. I think 4-0 will be the result. That's not to be disrespectful to Forest in any way, shape or form, but they are really, really struggling. Their club is in turmoil, and I think they're going to need to recognise there's probably a period of adaptation for them now with Ange Postecoglou coming in. Like I said at the start, guys, I'm going to try and do an instant reaction to this game, but if I don't manage to do an instant reaction, I will bring you a match review podcast Sunday or Monday, so keep an eye out for that. As well as that, I'm going to be looking ahead to the Bilbao game, so it's really exciting. We're getting into that period of the year now where there's games coming thick and fast, and there'll be lots of preview pods, there'll be lots of match review pods, so stick around for all of that, and make sure you hit follow wherever you get your podcasts from to make sure that you don't miss a single episode, and make sure you know everything you need to know with games coming up. Another thing I just want to say is if you have enjoyed this episode or any episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, make sure you go and leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts from. It really, really does help. Now, all that's left to say is thank you for following, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you again very, very soon.